What is going on, everyone? Welcome into our next divisional draft grades video, where we're going to be taking a look back at the draft, talking about who maximized the picks that they had, maybe who stole some really great players, maybe perhaps based on my own evaluations who reached a little bit, or maybe passed on who I think will be better options at the next level. But ultimately just taking a look as well at who these players are, how they fit in with their new teams, and what I think they might be at the next level. I do encourage you to take a look in the description below. I have a new grading criteria for this, really trying to amp up the consistency and transparency with how I come up with these grades. While you're down there, if you could throw a like on the video, I really appreciate it. It takes just a second. It's a meaningful way to support my channel. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of these draft grades videos. And next up, we have my deep dive series coming in just a few weeks. Going to work throughout the entire summer, previewing every NFL team in depth. I think it's the best thing I have to offer on this channel. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed, and let's get into it. Here we have the AFC North, and we're going to start things off by talking about the Baltimore Ravens, who I usually enjoy their drafts, and this one wasn't different. You know, I think they generally have very good evaluations and make very good picks on a year-in, year-out basis, and I think they did that again this year. Before we get into the players, I do want to note, I was a little bit surprised that they didn't address cornerback really in this draft. They did take Kyle Blue Kelly in the 5th round, who we'll talk about, but you know, this was a massively deep cornerback class and a talented cornerback at the class, at the top of the class. And they ultimately, you know, they take Zay Flowers. We'll talk about that. But they had Joey Porter, Deontay Banks, the hometown kids staring at him. 3rd round, they go with a linebacker. You know, I do just want to perhaps offer a perspective on this, that they still have to do something in free agency or with a trade to get a number 2 corner, because after you bring Lamar Jackson back, you bring in Zay Flowers here, this team really is in a position to not just be better than people expect, but genuinely be at the top in the conversation for being one of the best teams in the AFC and a chance at a Super Bowl. So I'm very curious just to see what they do with that position group, because I thought for sure with the 22nd pick, when Joey Porter and Deontay Banks are there, it's like, okay, that's an easy pick. But it's not to say Zay Flowers was a bad pick. In fact, I'm giving this an A. I think this is excellent value. Zay was actually my number 2 wide receiver over Jackson Smith and Jigba, just because of the upside being a little bit higher. And I think Zay's floor is incredibly high as well. He's versatile. He can absolutely dominate as a deep threat in the NFL. The 4.42 40 was a touch slower than I was expecting. I thought we'd see something in the 4.3s. But ultimately, he's still going to be a good deep threat, right? It's not all about speed. He's got route running. He's a thicker wide receiver. It's a reason I liked him a little bit more than Jordan Addison, is when you watch him trying to run down the sideline, Zay Flowers isn't disturbed by contact in the way that someone like Jordan Addison or maybe Jalen Hyatt in this class are. He's got the play strength to play through what ultimately is going to be very physical coverage in the NFL, even if they're not getting flagged for it. Corners are grabbing all the time because it's smart, and Zay Flowers can handle that stuff. He's an excellent route runner. He sets stuff up with, you know, subtle jab steps and head fakes, shoulder fakes, you name it. He's got incredible foot speed that showed up in his 3-cone and shuttle times, and good ball skills. A lot of people have made Antonio Brown comparisons for Zay Flowers. It's tough to make those kind of comps because it's just so rare that a guy becomes that kind of player. But the way he moves, the type of athlete he is, and the type of football player he is, I'm not going to say that's impossible. So, you know, Ravens fans have got to be just lighting up, because for years, how often have we heard Ravens fans say, give Lamar playmakers and give him an NFL-style offense and let him cook, or at least let's see if he can cook. Because the last few years, they haven't been giving him guys like Zay Flowers. Granted, you know, they did try with Hollywood Brown, a little bit of a different player, but they didn't give them the depth of receivers like they have now, certainly with Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, 3 tight ends that I like, you know, and now, of course, the new system coming in, getting away from Greg Roman. We finally get to see what this can look like with Lamar, and I'm just stoked for the Ravens. I again just want to see what they do with that cornerback too. But you get to the 3rd round now, because they gave up a 2nd round pick for Roquan Smith, which again I think is worth noting. You did give up the 2nd round pick for Roquan. You've drafted oh my gosh, Patrick Queen in the first round, and now you're spending a third-round pick on Trenton Simpson. And I always say you don't draft for a need. In day 2, day 3 of the draft, you're drafting best player available, and I think you can make a very good case that, you know, they basically did that here with Trenton Simpson, who I've been lower on throughout this process. I said first round is absurd. I said second round is quite high for me for Trenton Simpson. Third round, I can get behind it. He's a remarkable athlete, but I will stand on the take that his college tape is horrible at the linebacker position. He's no idea what he's looking at in coverage. He takes bad pursuit angles because even though he's fast, he's not as fast as he thinks he is with some of the angles he takes. He doesn't have good run diagnostics. He has horrible take-on technique as a block shedder. So there's a lot of work to be done with Trenton Simpson. The one thing I'm very curious about is I flirted with the idea of him maybe being more of an edge at the next level when I talked about him in my linebackers video. And because you have Patrick Queen and you have obviously Roquan Smith there. Now, Patrick Queen, I think, is on the last year of his deal. It's very realistic that Trenton Simpson overtakes Patrick Queen in time, and I think he very well could do that. But if Patrick Queen balls out and they want to pay 2 linebackers, I think Trenton Simpson could be that sort of Tyus Bowser type of linebacker for them, right? And I think he's a more dynamic athlete than Tyus Bowser is. So I'm curious to see how he gets used. I think the value is just fine, but again, I just want to wrap up day 1. Like, you probably could have taken a guy maybe like Darius Rush, for example, or Keely Ringo. Like, I'm curious with the decision to draft a linebacker. I'm not going to be overly critical here. I'm giving them an A. They got very good value, but it could be something if they don't address this in a trade or free agency that holds their team back from getting up to that, you know, also high standard of the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bills, you know. It's a high level of competition. You can't slip up in the AFC, and you also can't trout out Brandon Stevens or Demarion Williams as your CB2, right? So that's all I'm going to say about the cornerback thing. I won't say any more. Let's get to day 3 of the draft, where I thought they made some good picks. You know, Tavius Robinson, edge out of Ole Miss. Very interesting backstory with him. Canadian guy, was kind of playing well in the CFL, or not in the CFL, in a Canadian collegiate program. Really just had plans of just going to play in the CFL, but their 2020 season got canceled for COVID, and he entertains the idea of going to America for college ball, goes to Ole Miss, and then, you know, kind of came up through that system, got used to a different level of competition in the SEC, and balled out in his final season. The only real, like, he's got good tape. I think he's an instinctive pass rusher and a big-bodied guy that can play the run. Like, he actually fits that mold of your Matt Judons and Zadarius Smiths that they've had so much success with in these mid-rounds. He just, to me, has to bulk up in his arms. He looks like an NFL edge rusher in every other area of his body. It's just his arm strength is lacking. So when he goes to that bull rush, he's lacking a little bit of a pop in his hands. So can the Ravens really get him to commit in the weight room in that department and maybe get him up to like 275 pounds, really adding functional play strength up here? And maybe you're getting a steal here in the 4th round. I think the value was fine. I was honestly a little bit earlier than I saw him going, but so many edge guys were off the board. I was fine with this pick. Then you take Kyle Blue Kelly out of Stanford. He's a really smart zone corner, and I know the Ravens are going more zone these days. But, you know, I think he's fine. I think he's a career backup type. He's just very limited in man-to-man coverage. He doesn't have the best reaction time. Like, if he's riding a receiver's hip pocket and he whips inside on a skinny post or a dig route, it just felt like Kyle Blue Kelly was consistently a step or two behind to react both physically and mentally. I don't think he's a bad player, but I just would tamper expectations for him a little bit. They take Malasala Amave Laulu, or Laulu, out of Oregon. Got to him late in the process. Big, hulking offensive tackle at Oregon. I think they see him as a guard. But Baltimore has had success with these big-bodied guys, right? They had Orlando Brown. They have Morgan Moses. They draft Daniel Falele last year. They very well might see him as a tackle in their system, but their system's changing. So, you know, he's a big guy. Another guy that I think could use a little bit of extra motivation in the weight room. I didn't think he carried the best weight, and I know I'm one to talk, but we're talking about NFL athletes here. You know, I think he's got good play strength, but at his size, he should have great play strength, and that's just something that I think is going to have to come along if he's ever going to be a starter. But in the 6th round, I think he's a solid pick. I will say a huge winner in this draft is Ben Cleveland, a player I loved back in the 2021 draft. They let Ben Powers go in free agency, and now Cleveland, I think, has a clear path to being their left guard after not really getting replaced in the draft here, and I'm excited to see him maul dudes. But speaking of guard, you get to the 7th round, and they take Andrew Voorhees, which I can't call this like a certified steal or anything, because you look at his age, he's going to be 25 as a rookie, and he's not going to be able to play in his rookie season. So you understand why he was available in the 7th round, but his tape is outstanding, man. Before the injury, he was a late second, early third round grade for me. And what's great is, like, after he tore his ACL, he still said, hang on, I want to do the bench. And he put up 40 bench press reps, which matched his play strength on tape. So this dude is a grinder. He's a meathead, and he's going to get back healthy in 2024. And honestly, I think this is perfect because you have a deep roster already. You're taking a guy that may not have made your team. And you're going to just stash him on IR for a year, and he'll come back next year. And I would not be the least bit surprised if he is their starting right guard in 2024 after the 34, 60. I don't know. How old is Kevin Zeitler at this point? He's been in the league forever. But at some point, he's not going to be a right guard anymore. And I think Andrew Voorhees could be. So I love this draft from Baltimore. A little bit curious why they didn't address corner a little bit higher, but I am going to give it an A. I think they got great value with their first couple of picks. I think they found a starting guard in the 7th round with great process. I'm very curious to see what they can do with Tavius Robinson as well, because they've had so much success with players at that position. This show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy football. The moment this draft is complete, Best Ball Mania 4 goes live, and it is the biggest fantasy football competition of all time. Not even kidding. It's only $25 to enter for your shot at $15 million in total prizes and a first place prize of $3 million. You won't want to miss out on this action. The best part is, because it's best ball format, all you have to do is draft your teams, which you can do at home on your phone thanks to the amazing Underdog app. In Best Ball Mania, you join the tournament, draft your team as you would in any normal fantasy football league, and your lineup is locked in once the draft is complete. No waivers, no trades. That's right, it is set it and forget it until it's time to collect your cash. Underdog automatically optimizes your lineup weekly to create the highest scoring option. What are you waiting for? Get signed up at UnderdogFantasy.com or via the App Store with promo code TFG. And Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code TFG for your shot at $15 million inside Best Ball Mania 4. And then we got the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you know, this was like playing a round of golf and just knocking it right down the fairway. They just kind of went down the board and took the best player available at positions of value. And they played this exactly as you're supposed to play it when you are a team with a franchise quarterback like Joe Burrow, an elite franchise quarterback like Joe Burrow. You're going to be picking at the end of the draft every year. Take good athletes at valuable positions, gamble on the traits. Even if it's not a need, get ready for the future and hope these guys can develop into guys that, you know, return top draft pick value, right? Because you're just not going to be picking 12 or 13 for a long time if you're the Bengals. And you look at these guys, like, especially at the top, Miles Murphy, DJ Turner, these are guys with the physical tools to potentially return high-end returns down the line. So Miles Murphy, I was always a little bit hesitant when he was getting mocked 15th and 18th because his final season of tape just wasn't very good. He has so much to develop, and I'm curious why his tape in 2022 was so much worse than it was in 2021. But a 21-year-old dude with freaky athletic tools who does have explosive tape out there, you just have to go back an extra year to find it. To find him at the very end of the first round, a little bit of a win for me, because when I initially put him 30th in my very first mock draft in January, people were like, what are you doing? This guy's going top 10. And I was like, I don't know. I don't see that. I see an explosive athlete with potential. But he ultimately goes at 28, which I think is the right spot for him. And it's a great spot to develop. You have Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson above him, and he can just kind of come in, scream off the edge, play a little bit of run defense on early downs. But I think long term, he's a more explosive player than Sam Hubbard, who's like fine, but maybe the most unexciting number 2 edge in the league. You get someone that has a little bit more explosiveness and excitement in Myles Murphy. So I think it's good value at that point, given that pick an A. And then DJ Turner at the end of the second round. Again, you're taking a corner with 4.26 speed who has good tape out there, just has a little bit to clean up. I do think he's going to compete for starting work. I like what Cam Taylor-Britt showed them last year. We'll see if Chidobe Awuzie is healthy enough to start for week 1. But all in all, like, this is the type of traits you take in the second round at a valuable cornerback position. I think this is a deep roster. I don't think that there were any glaring players that it was like, oh, why are you taking a 4th string or a backup corner when you could take this guy, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, this is good process by the Bengals. I'm curious to see what kind of player he turns into. Reminds me a lot of Trey Waynes, who the Bengals paid a big free agent contract to like 4 years ago, was never able to stay healthy, but a little bit of a loose coverage player because when he's so fast, his stop-start ability is a little bit less, but the long speed's incredible. You're not going to be able to really complete deep balls against a guy like this because he's so fast. So I do like DJ Turner at that spot. And then Jordan Battle at the very end of the third round, pretty much exactly where I thought he would go. I had a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him. He's not the most dynamic athlete, but he's a very good football player. It just really down the board, if you're just grading out safety tape, he checks every box, but he's not like the most exciting player. He's a good run defender. He's got good length, but he's not overly big or strong. He's a really secure tackler. That's probably the best thing about him. I mean, the tackling consistency between him and Brian Branch was absurd over the last couple of years. As far as coverage, he's not the most athletic guy for man-to-man situations, but that length can help him at times. And then in zone, I didn't love him as a true free safety because he didn't display the most instinctive aggression back there. He just kind of had that stay deeper than the deepest conservative approach back there. But in all of those hybrid quarters assignments that he was asked to run in at Alabama, when there was a specific rule that told him, if this is your key, you can trigger, you can go make plays, he was much better in those situations. And the Bengals are transitioning much more to that rotational safety approach. And that to me is where I like Jordan Battle, as opposed to more of a true free safety or a true strong safety, a little bit of both. I think he's going to compete for that number 2 safety job. They signed, Scott from the Rams. Like, I think Battle can probably be better than that. And you may have drafted a starting safety essentially in the 4th round here. So gotta love that pick. You get to day 3, and I love the value that they found. Charlie Jones was honestly, I can't call it a certified steal because this is about where he should have gone. But as far as the fit, this is freaking perfect, man. They are eventually going to need a slot receiver replacement for Tyler Boyd. He's getting up there in age. They're going to have to pay T. Higgins. They're not going to be able to retain Tyler Boyd long term. Eventually, he's just not going to be good anymore, right? He's getting up there. So Charlie Jones is a really good slot wide receiver. He runs incredible routes. He's a little bit older. He's 24 years old, but that age is going to make him an impact now. He transferred from Iowa to Purdue in 2022 and immediately became this team's best wide receiver. He ended up with 28 targets in his first 2 games, and that didn't let up. He ended up with 110 receptions, 1,361 yards, 12 touchdowns, and it's because he's a really good separator. He has incredible acceleration into the second level, very similar to the areas of the field that Tyler Boyd wins. So I think eventually he's going to be their slot wide receiver, their number 3 guy. But while he waits for his opportunity, he's an amazing punt returner, something that they kind of need. He I think returned like 42 punts or something in his throughout his time at Iowa and Purdue, and averaged like 8 yards a return, which is good, but most importantly, didn't muff a single one. So you get a key special teams contributor, a really good depth piece as a wide receiver 4. The only thing I'll say is, like, he's not an outside wide receiver. I think a lot of people are going to see that 4.45 speed and say, oh, he can be a deep threat. No, he is 175 pounds. We talked about what Zay Flowers can do with a little bit more girth to run through contact vertically. No, you get your hands on Charlie Jones, he's not going to accelerate through that contact. He really struggled in a matchup against someone like Joey Porter. There was just nowhere he could go. So, he's a slot guy, but I think he's going to be a damn good one in Cincinnati. And you want like a dynasty sleeper, Charlie Jones in 2 or 3 years is going to be racking up 700 or 800 yards a year and being an impact for this offense. Chase Brown in the 5th round, absolutely love it. He was in my top 10 running backs list. Super explosive player, really incredibly productive at Illinois. I mean, the Bengals just loaded up Big Ten tape, and they were like, okay, who are the players that teams felt like they had to run their offense through? Charlie Jones for Purdue, Chase Brown for Illinois. Productive in both the receiving game and the rushing game. Great speed back there. If nothing else, he's going to be an awesome number 2. Behind Joe Mixon. But if things do not work out with Joe Mixon, and I know they've kind of, they've been a little bit wishy-washy with that whole situation lately. So I do think Chase Brown has, solid starter upside. My pro comp for him is Miles Sanders. Incredible athletic ability. Not the strongest guy. He's going to need well-blocked runs to make the most of them because he's not going to create a ton on his own. You get him in space and he can make guys miss, but, yards after contact, not really going to be his strong suit, but still great value in the 5th round. And then Andre Iosivas in the 6th round. I'm not like the biggest Andre Iosivas fan. He got a ton of hype in the pre-draft process, a Senior Bowl guy, really great workout, but I still liked him. I liked him in the 4th round. He's a deep threat. I think you look at him and like, okay, if anything happens to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, if these guys miss a game or two, or God forbid they get hurt longer than that, Iosivas can step in and be someone that can take the top off the defense and threaten vertically. So I thought wide receiver depth was a huge need for the Bengals. Not something that I had been addressing for them earlier in the draft, but when I was doing my 7-round mock drafts, 4th, 5th round, even 3rd round, taking guys like this is exactly what I thought they should have done. So I love that approach. They take a punter out of Michigan at the end of the 6th round. I kind of like it. Their punter has been one of the worst in the league for a long time. So we'll see if this guy's good. I don't watch special teamers. And then they take DJ Ivey, kind of height, weight, speed. Not weight, he's very slender, but a height and speed type of corner to develop at the end of the draft. Fine process. So I'm going to give the Bengals an A for this draft. Good work. I thought they nailed value at critical positions, and some of these guys will work out, some of them won't work out, but if you come out of here with 2 or 3 players at critical positions to kind of keep the pipeline and the depth coming, it's going to be a win for the Bengals in the long term. Then we've got the Cleveland Browns, who didn't have a 1st or a 2nd round pick, so puts a little bit of a different perspective on this thing. Not going to comment on the Watson trade at the moment. Let's just talk about their draft. So to get Cedric Tillman at the top of the 3rd round, awesome pick, man. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's been a sound player. He's been a solid number 2, a big year for him. I think a contract year for DPJ. So this puts a little bit of pressure on him to reach his upside. But ultimately, I think Cedric Tillman can be a better receiver. Cedric Tillman is a very similar athlete to Donovan Peoples-Jones. As a big-bodied guy with good speed and, solid foot quickness for a guy that size. DPJ's a little bit faster, but Cedric Tillman uses his size and plays up to it so much more consistently. And if you want that true X on the outside, if they're looking across division and they want their T. Higgins, I think that is in a realm of possibilities for Cedric Tillman as a 3rd-round pick. I think that's a little bit optimistic. My pro comp is Devontae Parker for Cedric Tillman. But I had a 2nd-round grade on Tillman, loved his tape. He ended up in my top 10 for wide receivers, and to get him in the middle of the 3rd round is a great pick, a borderline certified steal, honestly, but not quite enough of a steal to go that far. I wanted to really save that grade for, the true remarkable picks. But this is a great pick. And then you get Siaki Ika at the end of the 3rd round. I love what they've done with that defensive line, man. I was laughing at the Browns for their defensive tackle group when I did my position needs video back in January and called it an XFL group on the inside. And now they've brought in Dalvin Tomlinson. They made a couple other signings. Siaki Ika in the 3rd round is also very close to a certified steal. I had him as a late 2nd, early 3rd round guy. The only thing with Ika, he's got great size and he's got great run defense reps out there, and I think he can play nose for them, but the consistency was infuriating with him. And I think this is something you see a lot in Big 12 defensive linemen. It just is what it is. It's so much spread. There's so many plays where they just can't do anything because all of it is happening on the outside. And I think these guys just get tired of going balls to the wall every single play. So I can justify it a little bit. But with Ika, it's like, man, there was games where you see him dominate and hold up two-gapping against double teams and having awesome goal line stands. And then there's other games you watch from him. It's like, dude, why are you standing straight up and doing nothing against the run? So if the Browns can tap into the physical nature of the position there, you're getting something. I will say, like, he's a good pass rusher for such a big nose tackle. The way he wins reminds me a lot of like Damon Harrison, who was never a great pass rusher, but did enough that, like, if they threw the ball on first or second down, he could kind of slowly get after the quarterback. And I see that very same thing in Siaki Ika. He's kind of an instinctive rusher with quick feet, a couple different pass rush moves to get there. Not going to win early because he's not this great athlete, but I think they found something in Siaki Ika. But they've really struggled to hit with these day 2, day 3 defensive tackles. I think this is one of the better ones they've taken, but it's also going to come down to like coaching and development for them as well, which has just also been something they've struggled with. Let's just be honest about it. So hoping for the best for Siaki Ika. But then you get to day 3, and my goodness, DeJuan Jones in the 4th round. Look, I get it. Teams are concerned about the size and the foot speed, and it's possible there was something off the field that they didn't like about him. You know, he bails out of the Senior Bowl after one day. I think he skipped out on some of the drills and stuff between the combine and the pro day. Maybe interviews weren't great for him. That could be a thing behind the curtain that just wasn't available to me as far as collecting all of the information. But the on-field grade, the physical grade, I really liked DeJuan Jones at the end of the 1st round, certainly into the 2nd round. And to me, you're getting a long-term Jack Conklin replacement, a guy that's staying close to home in Ohio. This guy's 6'8", 375 pounds. Yeah, his foot speed isn't great at that size, as you wouldn't expect, but it's not like the worst thing you've ever seen. Like, I think his foot speed is better than what Orlando Brown's is, and he's been a very solid pass protector. DeJuan Jones is a former basketball player. I thought he could get out of his stance and block wide zone, which, you know, Cleveland wants to do in Stefanski's system. But they also run a lot of gap stuff, and he's an absolute mauler in the run game. He uses his arms really well in both phases of the game. I really think you're going to have an opportunity to phase out Jack Conklin within a year or two and find a Trent Brown, Orlando Brown type of player, both guys that were not highly drafted picks for similar reasons to a guy like DeJuan Jones. I think he's actually honestly closer to like what Mekhi Becton was. So I'm a huge fan of his game. Will not be surprised if he is a quality starter for the Browns within a couple of years. One of the best steals in the entire draft. Kind of the opposite with Isaiah McGuire in the 4th round. Not the end of the world. Not going to slam them for this pick, but I did think it was quite early for this player. I see him as a true jag, just a guy, fine against the run, fine as a pass rusher. He's got some quick pass rush moves. He's got decent power. I know a lot of people liked him. Maybe I watched the wrong games. I don't know. I just didn't see it with Isaiah McGuire. It kind of reminds me a lot of these, you know, day 3 picks, even 3rd round picks for the Browns on the defensive line that I just haven't liked, and they haven't worked out. You know, Alex Wright, Jordan Elliott, I thought those were reaches, and I feel the same way about Isaiah McGuire. It's not the end of the world in the 4th round. I will personally be surprised if he turns into a good player. I think it could have gone in different directions. A guy like Viliami Fehoko, maybe, if you want a rotational edge, Viliami Fehoko, I think is going to be a better player at the next level. I could very well be wrong. That's the point of this whole thing, but just giving you my opinion on that one. And then you get to the 5th round, they take Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I had a 6th round to a priority free agent grade. A lot of these backups went earlier than I expected. I think it's a solid pick. I think he's a career backup and can be a very good backup for Deshaun Watson for a long time. Skill set wise, they can do a lot of the same stuff. DTR is a really good athlete. I think he's pretty good at reading defenses and getting through his progressions. He started 1 million games in a pro style system at UCLA. Kind of a bad decision maker though, like throws a lot of picks, makes a lot of bad reads. I think that holds him back. But what really holds him back for me is, and this is where I disagreed with a lot of the hype on DTR, is I just don't think he's got a good arm to push the ball downfield. I think he's got velocity in the short to intermediate game, which is why he can be a good backup in the NFL. But when you watch his deep balls, like, man, I don't know if it, like, every game he played in, or at least every game I watched, had just like imposing wind or something, but his deep balls just they float their way out of bounds. He overthrows guys at times. I just don't think he's an accurate deep ball thrower. I thought when he was throwing on the move as well, the ball would flutter and the arm talent wasn't there either. So when he can throw, 15 to 20 yards or less from a, clean pocket with a two-pronged base in his throwing motion, he can let it rip. But I just think the arm talent is a limiting factor for him and is going to keep him as a backup. A lot of people are comparing him to Jalen Hurts, and I didn't even like Jalen Hurts as a prospect. I was wrong about him, and maybe I'm wrong about DTR, but at least with Jalen Hurts, I could admit, like, his accuracy in his final year at Oklahoma was, like, the strides he made there was really impressive. So I don't know. I think he's going to be a good backup in the 5th round. That's a solid pick, but I think there's going to be a lot of excitement for him, and I don't know. I think he's going to hang around in the league as a quality backup, and again, 5th round pick, that's a good pick. Right after that, though, Cameron Mitchell in the 5th round is a steal. I mean, I had a 3rd round grade on him. I think he's a great fit with who they have. He's former teammate of Greg Newsome, and Cam Mitchell is just a poor man's Greg Newsome, honestly. So if Newsome goes down, you have the same skill set, just turn down the levers to like 80%. He's not as good of an athlete. He's not as instinctive. He's a little bit smaller, not as fast, like all that. But you want to talk about a guy that can do all of the things that Greg Newsome does and did them in the same system at Northwestern? Absolutely. Like, I think in more of a Fangio style system with the quarters and stuff, I think he had the upside to maybe be a number 2 corner. Maybe he can still be that for Cleveland, but there's just not a lot of avenues for success for him here because they have such a loaded room. But to fill out that room with another good corner on depth, like, I love the way they treat this secondary, especially at cornerback. Then they get Luke Whippler in the 6th round. More great value. I understand why he fell. 31.5-inch arms was some of the worst for any offensive lineman in this class, in any class. He's 300 pounds. He's kind of scheme specific as well. He needed to go to a wide zone blocking offense. Well, there you go, Cleveland. He goes to a wide zone blocking offense. I think he can get in the mix. Ethan Pochitz had a breakout year last year. They have Nick Harris coming back from injury. The value is just too good for them to pass up here. I think they have pretty much guaranteed that they're going to retain having a quality center, whether it's Pochitz backing up his breakout kind of anomaly season, ultimately, whether it's Nick Harris getting back healthy, who they had expectations for last year, or even Luke Whippler surprising as a 6th round pick because he is such a good scheme fit. He's a really natural run blocker because he is shorter. He gets really good natural leverage, but just the play strength is lacking with him. I always thought 2nd round was insane for him, where I had seen him quite often. I may have even seen him go in the 1st round in a mock draft. I never got behind that, but I thought 3rd round and beyond, for the right scheme fit, he could be a starting center. So really like what the Browns did with those last 2 picks. I mean, for a team that didn't have a 1st or a 2nd round pick, I think you got someone you could have justified to me in the 1st round in DeJuan Jones. You got 2 players that I could have seen going in the 2nd, and then 2 players that I thought could have gone in the 3rd round in this draft. So again, for a team that didn't have a 1st or a 2nd round pick, you can make a case they got a late 1st, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds out of this. Now that's based on my evaluations. We'll see if I'm right about that. But man, given what they had to work with, this was a great draft, giving the Browns an A for this one. And I think Andrew Berry just continues to impress. I'm so encouraged by what he's done since he took over for Dorsey years ago. But let's do our last team here, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this draft's absolutely absurd. Like, this is a franchise-altering draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of the best drafts I can remember from any team in the last few years. And I reserve saying that for when I truly feel about that. I mean, the players they took here were crazy steals at valuable positions. So I like the Broderick Jones trade up in the 1st round. They come up and jump the Jets, who were probably going to take Broderick Jones. And he just makes a ton of sense in Pittsburgh. They've had such mid tackles over the last, 4 or 5 years plus. You get a guy in Broderick Jones who is a truly special athlete with upside at the position. He does need to work on his technique. He's either still 20 or just turned 21. I think hand placement needs to improve. I think he needs to get better at stepping inside and cutting off inside moves, but that's what NFL offensive line coaches are for. His length, his athleticism, I think he can continue to get stronger as well through just getting older and more time in the weight room. I mean, he could seriously be a all-pro type of tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers with the right coaching, and we know they have that. I mean, they turned freaking Dan Moore into like a decent tackle. I can't wait to see what they can do with Broderick Jones. Then stealing Joey Porter at the top of the second round. This is going to be one of the most memorable, there's a lot of picks that you remember being the first pick on day 2, where you had all day to think about it, and you kind of knew, this guy, he had no business falling into the second round. I don't know if teams just forgot he was available or what, but Joey Porter was a top 10 player in this draft. I think he was 9th for me. To get him, not just to steal him in the second round, but this guy was mocked to the Pittsburgh Steelers in, 90% of mock drafts out there. And I know, mock draft, whatever, everybody's wrong, blah, blah, blah. No, there was a good reason he was mocked to Pittsburgh. They needed a corner. He fits their system. He would have been probably best player available at 17. Oh, and by the way, his dad won a Super Bowl playing for the Steelers. So, this was just a legacy pick, man. I cannot wait to see him here. Perfect situation for them. They get the tackle and the corner. I cannot believe they pulled that off. Honestly, after that, I was like, I don't really care what happens. This is already an incredible draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it kept coming. Keanu Benton in the middle of the second round, perfect. Love him here. They're so good with defensive tackles. Honestly, the fact that they like him makes me feel even better about Keanu Benton because they are so good with this position. They needed a 3 technique. I had them taking guys like Brian Brzee at the top of the second round. Keanu Benton, not quite as explosive as Brian Brzee, but as a potential starter and a 3 technique for them, I love it. I was a little bit discouraged by how he handled double teams and his true play strength, but he's not a horrible run defender. Very much a Pittsburgh Steeler fit, a great value there in the second round, filling a need. But then at the end of the third round, and I mean the end, the 30th pick in the third round, Darnell Washington is still available. And there were reports that maybe there was, some knee stuff. I guess because, maybe because he is so tall, there could be a lot of weight in that. And some of these truly freaky athletes, sometimes their bones just can't support all of that explosiveness and all of the weight. I don't know. It could very well be something to that. But what a steal to get a guy that was sometimes snuck into the first round as a value. Certainly in the second round, I thought someone was going to take him. This is a truly freaky tight end prospect. He's half offensive lineman, half tight end. And honestly, I love the fit in Pittsburgh because I did have questions on if Darnell Washington could be a true number 1 tight end. I know you look at the testing and the size and all that and say, oh, this guy's fast and doesn't have drop issues and he's big. He can be, Gronk or something. He's not a fluid athlete. He's not a route runner. He's actually a pretty easy cover for safeties. I think as more of a play action threat out of heavy packages where you can run straight lines and kind of get lost for a second and pull away from guys. That's really where he was best at Georgia. And as a red zone threat, that's kind of as a tight end 2 or in a situation where maybe you have a tight end like maybe an Evan Ingram or a Kelsey or something where they're playing more of that slot wide receiver position and you have 2 tight ends on the field and you're kind of using mismatches and big personnel where you can run, you can throw out of it. That's kind of perfect here. I mean, Pat Freiermuth can block in line, but you can play Pat Freiermuth anywhere. You can go 12 personnel. This is going to be great for Najee Harris. This is going to help the run game a lot. And Darnell Washington doesn't have to be a feature tight end. He can just be a really big headache for teams. He's a guy that can catch 5 or 6 touchdowns, come out with 400 yards, be a blocker, someone that frustrates defensive coordinators from a play calling perspective, a scheming perspective. this is not to replace Pat Freiermuth, not in any way, shape, or form. It's to complement Pat Freiermuth and to complement Kenny Pickett and everything else. All these playmakers, they have such a diversity of skill sets here. This is a really dynamic offense at this point. And I love that they upgraded the offensive line, too, with Broderick Jones, his teammate. So, they're going to have a chemistry on combo blocks coming in. So, what a freaking first couple days of the draft. But it keeps going. They come out at the very end of the 4th round, basically a 5th round pick, and take Nick Herbig, who, if you ask me, where could Nick Herbig go where he's going to be in a best case scenario? I would have said Pittsburgh or New England, probably, or maybe Minnesota with Flores with that Belichick system. And there you go. He goes to Pittsburgh. Same school TJ Watt came out of. He's not TJ Watt, but he can be baby TJ Watt, right? Just like on the other side, they've found in the mid rounds in Alex Highsmith, who's actually not a horrible comp for Herbig, but Herbig is a really instinctive pass rusher. He's got lightning quick feet. He's got rapid arms. He's got a swim move, a spin move. He's got enough speed to threaten the edge, but he'll use that speed as a threat to set up inside moves. Really efficient pass rusher at Wisconsin. Some people had him making the transition to off ball. I didn't like that. It's not what he played at Wisconsin. I don't think that's what his athletic profile tells you he should play. To me, he is the ideal third edge to begin with, behind TJ Watt, behind Alex Highsmith. You can give those guys some breaks. You can't play every single snap out there, right? So you get a guy that's going to rotate in, give you pretty much the same thing. And then I think there's a world as well where maybe they feel like Nick Herbig is just about as good as Alex Highsmith, and they don't want to pay Alex Highsmith the $17 million contract they've got coming because Pittsburgh's so good at developing that defensive line position. So I'm really excited to see Nick Herbig in a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. I think that was the perfect pick for them. They needed some edge depth. If nothing else, he's going to be like what they signed in Malik Reed last year, just a better version. And then you fast forward to the 7th round where they take a 3rd round corner in Corey Trice. Corey Trice is a freaky athlete. He's 6'2 plus, if not 6'3. He's fast, really good zone instincts. I wanted to see him go to a cover 3 team, to be honest. And for that reason, I don't know if this is going to be the best fit for Corey Trice, especially at corner. Scheme fit is so incredibly underrated and important. So I do want to say that, if he doesn't work out here, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets cut within a year or two and ends up in, Seattle or Denver or Carolina, somewhere where they run a lot more cover 3 and he's much more successful. But the value and the type of athlete you're getting is almost too damn good to pass up at that point. I think that's what they felt. This is basically as an undrafted pickup for Corey Trice. And then he grabbed Spencer Anderson out of Maryland. I didn't get to his tape, but they have a good eye for guards. So, given that I didn't watch him, I'll trust their opinion on that. But yeah, man, this was a franchise-altering draft on both sides, honestly. You got 2 impactful defensive linemen, whether they're starters or not. You got, to me, a number 1 corner and a left tackle, both with Pro Bowl plus upside. And then a dynamic kind of chess piece for your offense in Darnell Washington. And then who knows, maybe Corey Trice turns into a starter for them. This is a remarkable draft. Got to give this one an A+. The first draft here from Omar Khan, it was spectacular. So there's your AFC North. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please do hit that like button. If you did, drop your comments down below where you agree, where you disagree, who are your team's favorite picks. We'll see you guys soon. We're doing the AFC East next. Looking forward to that. That should be up later this afternoon. Peace out.